Welcome to Run, Walk, Talk, Tales of Inclusion and Development. I'm Judy, and my pronouns are she and her, and I'm here with Steph, and her pronouns are she and her. And today we are thrilled to welcome a special guest, Kim Acedo. Steph, maybe you can share a little bit about Kim.
Yeah, big welcome, Kim. So, Kim runs a virtual health and well-being coaching practice that supports women leaders and professionals in midlife and beyond. With more than a decade of coaching experience, she helps women prioritize their health and well-being because she believes that when women care for themselves, they don't just thrive personally, they create a ripple effect that challenges gender norms, strengthens leadership pipelines, and advances gender equity. Her work spans private and small group coaching, workshops, in person retreats, and speaking engagements, and all designed to inspire and elevate women's well being. She holds a master's degree in kinesiology and is certified as both a professional health and wellness coach and a national board health and wellness coach. And as an LGBT plus woman of color, she brings the richness of her intersectionality and lived experience to her practice, connecting with clients through deep empathy and authenticity. Thank you so much, Kim, for being here. Really appreciate it. Big
Thank
welcome.
you so much for having me. I'm excited you want to have this conversation.
When we talk about wellness and well-being, let's start sort of like, how do you define well-being? It's a word that's kind of like gets thrown around all over the place. And what does that actually look like in real life?
Yeah. So I think COVID really made the bigger picture impossible to ignore. So we learned during COVID the importance of connection and mental health and belonging. And these things became clearly essential. And we started to look at our health as broader than just our physical self. Because we can't separate our bodies from our minds and our environment. Everything is connected. So when we focus just on the body, it's too narrow. And so I really encourage people to think about well-being as your physical health, but also your mental and emotional health, your relationships, thinking about meaning and purpose, fulfillment, accomplishment. So when you think about well-being, it's so much broader than just our health, and it becomes more exciting as well. And also when it comes to well-being, I really think that in general, we need to stop looking around at how others are defining health and well-being. I believe that well-being is personal, like you define what it means for you. And you really want your values connected to your definition of well-being. Then it becomes personal and meaningful for you. And some of my clients even create like a well-being wheel with up to 8 areas that really matter to them. And physical health might be one of them, but relationships might be one as well. So again, just a broader definition is what I really encourage people to think about when they think about their health and well-being.
Right.
Well, I love that model because I think a lot of women think that, health means you're counting calories, you're counting your steps. It's this real disciplined process. And I'm sure, I mean, there's discipline definitely if you're thinking of the wheel, there's discipline involved. But what do you find surprises women the most when the conversation shifts to this time and energy and self-worth and purpose?
Judy, that's a great question. Thanks for asking that. I really believe and hope you can attest to this too. We women, we don't lack discipline. We are very disciplined. Think about all the things that we do and accomplish in a day, in a
Hmm.
week, in a month, years. You know, um, what we lack is time and energy. And especially for women in midlife, women in midlife are juggling multiple things. They're in that sandwich generation. They're juggling work, partners, kids, aging parents, and trying to maintain a social life as well. And so, health often becomes a feeling of like one more thing to do on the to-do list. And that can lead to feeling overwhelmed and feel like we're failing all the time. And so I really like to shift the conversation away from discipline and more to thinking about rest and recovery and boundaries and time and energy management. and also support. So sometimes I'll get a client that, thinks she needs more discipline, but what we end up working on are these other things, including self-worth, because that really is the foundation, because none of our habits stick unless we believe that we're worth putting the time and energy
Mm,
toward them.
And I like that. Let's talk a little bit more about sort of that habit piece too. I will also say, I am noticing this trend with stars and things like that, this sort of skinny trend, I'll call it, right? Um, and some of these habits, right, we grew up with about our bodies and that self-care. And so how do you see some of these sort of old stories influencing like your clients that you work with today?
Yeah, it's so interesting. From the time our sex is assigned, it
Hmm.
could be a gender reveal party, it could be
Hmm.
assigned at birth. We're put on a certain path.
Hmm.
Whether we're assigned a boy or a girl, male, female, it's we're put on a certain path. The kind of chores that we're given, the kind of clothes that our parents put on us, the kind of toys that we receive to play with. These are all messages that we get, and these messages, they get reinforced early on from our moms, our grandmas, our aunts, about, like you were talking about, stuff like our weight, our
Hmm.
size, our
Hmm.
youthfulness, our
Hmm.
worth.
Hmm.
Those things, those messages, they stick with us into our adulthood. And unfortunately, many of us girls and women, we learned that we have to earn rest, or we have to earn dessert, for
Yes.
example. And I
mhm,
think
Yes.
about my partner. My partner is a white woman, and she has two brothers. I don't have any siblings, but my partner has two brothers. And she told me that she remembers often where her mom or dad will encourage her brothers to have seconds for dinner
mhm.
or something like that,
Yep.
and will tell her, no, you can't have any because the summer's coming, as a young
Yeah.
girl. And
Wow.
Mhm,
so these are messages that we internalize.
Hmm.
And that's just one thing. I have another one if you're interested.
mhm,
Yeah.
um, Another one that we're taught and that I hear a lot is that self-care is selfish.
mhm. Yep.
And I still see society reinforcing that through praising women for taking care of everybody else first, and then we're punished when we take care of ourselves.
Mhm. We're
And I
selfish.
don't know if you both have seen
Yeah.
that Superwoman cape meme, uh, and it's really about women doing it all, and the whole message is that doing it all makes you heroic, right? And it's
Yeah.
something that, it's a subtle message, but it's so powerful, and it makes women feel like that's that's what they should aim for,
Yeah.
but it's unrealistic, it's inequitable with genders, right?
Mhm.
It's inequitable that
Mhm.
way, and it's
Mhm.
also inequitable with women of color as
Mhm.
well. So, all of these stories, they drive guilt, they drive shame, they drive overwork, and they drive this belief that we should be able to handle everything ourselves. And, as we enter our midlife years, we really want to recognize these messages playing out in our lives and ask ourselves if this is what we believe, and if this is what we want to pass on to our daughters and our granddaughters.
Well, and I think it's so important you're bringing this into the health conversation because I think for women, we want to take care of ourselves. We're living longer than ever, and we're living longer than many men, right? In general, like when we look at averages. And so I think it's so lovely that you are tying this message in of our purpose. It's okay to have seconds, not tying in sort of those images that we're really inundated with right now on, platforms, social
Mhm.
media platforms. We're
That's
seeing
right.
all sorts of stuff. And Steph, you said, people being skinny, or I think
Mhm.
now there's so much pressure with cosmetic procedures,
Mm.
and
Mhm.
um, it almost shifts, and those things become the norm. And I think that the other thing that can happen is, and I think certainly I, for myself, we think that if somebody is really tough on us, so if we're working with a trainer or a health coach, that that person being tough on us is motivating. And then I think we internalize it and we think, well, if we're tough on ourselves and we really, count every calorie and we stick to that, agenda that we've got for the week ahead for workout, that that's going to motivate us. But you say it's the opposite. And so why doesn't that sort of self-criticism motivate people? Why doesn't it work?
Yeah, I realized this about 12 years ago when I was personal training in Los Angeles. And I had a client I had for many years. And uh, I worked with her on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday every week.
Mhm.
And occasionally on Friday, I'd ask her if she had um, any commitments or goals or intentions that she wanted to work towards over the weekend before I saw her again on Monday. And one day she said she didn't want to have any cookies at her sister's party. Her sister's a great baker,
Yeah.
and she wasn't going to have any cookies. Well, she
Mhm.
ended up having one cookie, and then her sister put the cookies in the kitchen, and she ended up having another one and going to the kitchen, having another one and another one. And she ended up having 10 cookies
Mhm.
at her sister's party.
Mhm.
And she came to the gym on Monday, and I could see her walking up because it was glass doors. I could see her walking up, and I could see she's hunched over. She's not feeling good about herself. So I asked her what happened, how was her weekend? And she felt so much shame.
Mm,
And she had been punishing herself the entire weekend. And my first instinct as a trainer was to punish her some more, right? We have to burn off those calories, extra push ups, extra
Mhm.
squats.
hmm
And that was the last thing she needed. And so that's when it clicked for me that punishing ourselves, it doesn't work in the way that we think. More workouts, more discipline, more restrictions, more pushing does not create change. Now, especially when we're talking about women in midlife. First of all, self criticism, it drains our energy, it drains our motivation. Again,
Mhm.
it creates shame and not progress. When we feel terrible about ourselves, it doesn't make us healthier.
Yeah.
And, you know, as we think about aging, our workouts need to be smarter, not harder.
Mhm.
So more isn't always better, but this is what I'm seeing a lot with midlife women, right? It's like, oh my gosh, I'm gaining weight. Um, I don't look the same. I don't like how I look. And so harder, more, faster, stronger, that seems to be the direction that women often go. And, my clients, for example, they're often shocked by how much more progress you can make when you stop shaming yourself and instead
Mhm.
start caring for yourself.
Mhm.
Because it's self love that moves us forward, not self hatred. And we think like, if I hate my body enough, I'll want to make a change.
Yeah.
mm,
And really what it is if I love and accept my body, I'll value it and I'll care for it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, Kim, how wonderful for that client. I bet you when she left on that Monday to realize that probably also one, 10 cookies isn't going to take your entire, everything that all the hard work you've done. Oh, and how great that you were able to sort of change that around and realize that in yourself as a trainer too, right? That you've been conditioned. Another question around sort of the setting the goals, right? And this sort of a bit of this myth. People set goals again with best intentions and still end up feeling like they've failed. So what's usually going wrong here, and how does kind of your coaching help to, help people reset?
Yeah, whether you are into New Year's resolutions or not, this is often the
Mm-hmm.
time that, people in the beginning of the year look at their life, look at their health,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
decide they want to make some changes. And then as we enter the year, this is when the best of intentions tend to slip. And it's not because people failed. It's
Mm-hmm.
usually because the system they built, the goals they set, they were not built to last. The biggest mistake we can make is to rely on motivation and inspiration because it's inconsistent and we just can't wait to feel inspired before we start building habits. It doesn't work that way. And what I often see is that people don't know how to set goals that fit their real life. They choose goals that sound good. They're ambitious. They're exciting. And what we really need to do is build goals that work with our schedule, that work with our energy, that work with our responsibilities. So, for example, if you want to exercise more, you got to think about, what exercise fits the time that you actually have. Sure, you'd love to go to the gym 5 days a week, but is that realistic? Also, think about what type of energy actually or exercise actually meets the health that you desire. Like, what do you want for your body? And then when it comes to food, what eating plan actually works with your busy schedule and works with your energy levels? And so when our goals don't match our capacity, this is when people feel like they failed. But it's not them that failed, it's the goal that failed them. So through coaching, I help women look at their whole life. I help them look at their time, their energy, their stress load, their responsibilities, their support systems. So we consider all of these factors when creating goals. And then we partner together to build habits that actually fit with their life. Because when they fit with your life, that's when they stick and that's when they stay. And of course, there are going to be obstacles and challenges along the way, and coaching can help you navigate those. So, I often hear women want to hire a coach so badly, but they have too much going on. They're too busy. And when life settles, that's when they'll work on themselves and they'll hire a coach. But this is precisely the time to work with a coach, is when life is busy and life is hectic and you don't know how to take care of yourself when life is like this. So with coaching, it shifts your mindset from, spinning your wheels and trying harder and trying to get through life with, sheer brute force to really setting yourself up to succeed this time.
I love that. So it's not this all or nothing approach. You're really customizing it to the individual and looking what would work within their lives. So Kim, one question we ask all of our guests is, what books or podcasts are you either reading or listening to right now? Would love for you to share.
Ooh, I did have my own podcast that
Okay.
people could go and listen to. It was
Oh,
called the Me
wow.
Time Midlife Podcast. So you can
Okay.
still find it on Apple, on Spotify, Google Play, all the places that you can find podcasts. So I interviewed people about midlife stuff, and
Okay.
I also did an audio blog. So if anyone's interested in that, feel free to take a look at that. Me Time Midlife Podcast.
All right. And we'll include a link to
That's right.
that as well when we publish. Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you.
That's right. Kim, we're at time. Thank you so much. I
Mhm.
think we've learned a lot. I think we've learned that it's shame. Shame doesn't work. We need to focus on our energy. And I really love how you talked about that sort of individualization when it comes to your workouts and your food plan and looking at your life as a whole. So again, really enjoyed this conversation. So until next time.
Thank you.